Hi, hello, and welcome back to Everso. This is So, and this will be a reading of Death Before Inaction by hppjmxrgosg. Summary. Fuck off, Nicky. Hasn't anyone ever told you spider napping is illegal? You can't hold me here. I know my spider rights. God, you guys are so old. What are you, like 27? Scale of 1 to 10. How upset would you be if I told you I banged your mom? Or I got my grubby little hands on the Spider-Man timeline and fucked around a little bit. Not much. Everything changes. Chapter 1. Let's try this one more time. Peter Parker was born August 10th, 1996, to Richard and Mary Parker in Queens, New York, USA. He weighed 5 pounds, 7 ounces, had brown hair like his mother, and when he opened his eyes, approximately 8 minutes after his birth, he revealed brown eyes like his father. Average. Peter Parker is astoundingly, impossibly average. He grows up easily. Both his parents work, but he gets to visit his aunt and uncle often. Between the 4 of them, Peter is never really alone. At the behest of his father, Peter doesn't go to daycare, but does go to preschool. He meets a boy named Harry. They get along. Harry's father scares Peter, though he never says so out loud. Something about the man unnerves him. Harry is always very quiet around his father. Peter doesn't know why. He feels helpless. He wishes he understood. He wishes he was big and strong and could find out why Harry was quiet when his father was around. Why Mr. Osborn made Peter feel so nervous. He does nothing. When Peter is 5 years old, the date is September 11th, 2001. He's in kindergarten. He sees the smoke from his midtown classroom window. He has to hide under his desk with his classmates as his teacher quietly cries. He's scared and doesn't understand why. Peter wishes he was big and strong enough to understand why his teacher was crying, strong enough to help. Peter is helpless. He does nothing. Peter is 7 years old when his parents tell him he has to stay with his aunt and uncle for a while. That's okay. Peter likes Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They're younger than his parents. May lets him mess around with her watercolor paints, and Ben lets Peter wear his police hat. But Peter wishes he could go with his parents. Wishes he didn't have to be left behind and forgotten. Peter always felt like his parents were going off grand adventures without him, leaving him behind so he didn't get in the way. Once Peter was big and strong, he was sure they would let him come with them. He was sure of it. A few weeks after his parents leave, there's a knock at the door of Uncle Ben and Aunt May's small Queen apartments, and Peter opens it, expecting to be met with open arms of his mother, only to be greeted by 2 people in starched black uniforms. They wear sunglasses, even though it's almost nighttime, and Peter doesn't know why May is so quick to pull him away from the door. He's told to go to his room. He comes out in the morning to find Uncle Ben crying. He never seen Uncle Ben cry before. Ben's spots Peter lingering in the hallways and cries harder. Peter knows it's his fault. Aunt May is the one to tell him that his parents were in an accident. She's the one to tell him that Richard and Mary Parker are never coming home. Peter looks all around at his aunt and uncle's smart apartment in Queens and realizes he will never be going home. Peter wishes he had gone with his parents. Maybe if he had been there, had been strong like he was supposed to be, he could have saved them. But Peter wasn't even strong enough to make Ben stop crying. Peter was helpless. Peter can only do nothing. Ben and May never wanted kids. The apartment is too small for all of them, but Ben and May's job don't pay well enough to get a bigger one and feed him. Peter knows this. He may be 10, but he knows. He knows from the looks on their faces that this is all his fault. Peter wishes he was big and strong and could take care of himself. That way Ben and May wouldn't have to. His wish does not get granted. Peter is helpless. Ben and May work a lot. They don't have time to be with him like they used to. Peter insists that he can take care of himself. Ben and May thinks he needs a babysitter. Luckily, one of the neighbors has a son. Older than Peter by a couple years, high school. Ben and May thinks he's perfect. Peter thinks he reminds him of Mr. Osborne. His name is Skip. Skip babysits Peter for 5 months. Then he graduates. Go off to college in Oregon. Peter will never have to see him again. He reminds himself of this when it's late at night and he feels like crying because he wasn't strong enough, smart enough, good enough. Peter did nothing. Peter was helpless. He doesn't tell Ben and May. Skip is gone. It's all over now. All they would be is helpless too. Peter turns 11 and tells Ben and May that he doesn't need a babysitter anymore. He's going to be in middle school now. He's old enough to be home by himself. Ben and May believe him and agree. Peter had never been more relieved. On the first day of 6th grade, Peter meets a boy named Ned. Harry thinks he's too cheerful and talkative. Peter reminds Harry that he said the same thing about Peter all those years ago. Harry begrudgingly befriends Ned. Ned is overjoyed. Peter still doesn't like Mr. Osborne. He's older now he understands. But he isn't any stronger. Peter remains helpless. He does nothing. Ben loses his job when Peter is 12. When Peter asks why, Ben looks him in the eye and tells him, "Sometimes good men do bad things, and sometimes bad men do good things. The world is never as black and white as people would like you to believe." Peter, but the men who see bad things happening and stand to the side, those are the worst of men of all. If you have the power to stop something bad from happening, you must. Otherwise, you're worse than the people causing harm in the first place. 2 weeks later, a story breaks out about corruption in the NYPD. Apparently, a large number of officers and detectives had been involved in a citywide drug operations. Bribes, cover-ups, destroying evidence. May lets out a shout of joy, and Ben looks vindicated. But Ben doesn't get his job back, and Peter watches as May and Ben's faces look thinner and thinner, despite his plate remaining full. And Peter learns that sometimes, even if you aren't helpless, you can still end up that way. No good deed goes unpunished, Harry would say. Peter is inclined to agree. Peter is 13 and in 8th grade when he goes on a class field to Oscorp. He's been there before, of course, with Harry being his best friend since forever, and while Mr. Osborne has given Peter a tour of the labs before, given Peter interest in science, he never turned down a chance to see them again. "Why do you even want to go on this stupid field trip? We could literally see the labs anytime," Harry complained to him. Peter just shrugged. "What's the alternative? Stay home? Have to go to class despite the fact that literally every kid in our grade won't be there?" Peter challenged. "Besides, we don't even get to go with Ned," Peter told him. Harry lowered his eyes. Harry and Ned had an interesting relationship. Peter knew that without him in the mix, neither of them would ever hang out with each other. But they were both important to him, and they knew it, so they tolerated each other. Peter knew Harry was slowly warming up to their other friend. It might have taken a couple of years, but it was happening. Peter could sense it. "Fine," Harry groaned, flopping back against his bed, crushing the pages of his math homework. Peter chuckled and sealed his fate. When Peter was 13, he came home from the Oscorp field trip with a slight itch on the back of his neck. Peter was 13 when he woke up in the middle of the night, bed sheets soaked in sweat. He resisted the urge to scream as he felt like every one of his cells was lit on fire. Every movement felt excruciating. Peter managed to stumble to the bathroom and stick a thermometer in his mouth. May was working a night shift at the hospital. She wouldn't be home for hours, and when she did get home, she would be exhausted. Ben was out of town. He'd gotten a job as a sales rep for some constructive company and had to travel to Philadelphia every once in a while. The thermometer beeped. 105.3 degrees Fahrenheit, 40.7 degrees Celsius. Lethal. The ambulance ride alone would kill him. They didn't have a bathtub, so all Peter could do was grab every ice pack he could find and lay them on his body. Peter let out a small whimper as the cold on his nerve to exacerbate the sharp, prickly, burning rawness of his skin. He donned about 4 Tylenol and hoped they would be strong enough to bring his fever down and ease some of his nerve-frying pain. Peter was helpless, and he was going to die. He couldn't help but think about how much his funeral was going to cost. Peter wakes up the next morning, a good $3 fever gone and pain erased. His skin still feels raw to everything he touches. Everything is still a bit too loud and a bit too bright, but at least he isn't dead. Peter counts it as a win. Then Peter rips the bathroom door right off his hinges and thinks maybe it would have been better if he had died. His aunt is asleep when he leaves for school, and Ben is still out of town. Ned hardly notices Peter's new height, as noticing things he doesn't care about is not Ned's strong suit. But Harry comments it on it instantly. "Since when you are taller than me?" he balks, looking Peter up and down. Peter just shrugs and says he hasn't noticed. Harry complains about Peter's new 3 inches and calls him Sasquatch for the rest of the week. Peter does his best to lay low, ignore the signs, and not rip any more doors off their frames. His plan is ruined by Tuesday when he breaks his lab partner wrist in a fist bump. It is with this that Peter comes to understand 2 fundamental truths. 1. Peter has superpowers. He needs to get control of these powers. He needs to always be in control of these powers, because if he isn't, if he slips even the slightest bit, he's going to kill someone. 2. Absolutely nobody can ever know that he has superpowers. Peter had heard Melissa Vogue on complete accident. It was even an explainable accident, although far-fetched, and yet Peter was dragged through a week-long procession over the whole thing. He had to talk to counselors and nurses and doctors, the principal, the superintendent, and worst of all, the police. Peter went to a rich, Ivy school in Midtown on scholarship. Of course, Melissa's parents could press charges for assault. Ben had to come back from his work trip early. May had to skip shifts at the hospital and looked more exhausted than ever. There are threats of them going to the court. The first night, Ben and May had sat him down and asked what happened. Peter told them it was an accident, which it was. Neither seemed totally convinced. May started, putting her hand on his shoulder. "You know, you go to the school on a scholarship, right? If you lose that scholarship, well, maybe Ben and I just can't promise you'll be still able to go." "You're smarter than all those kids put together, Pete. Ain't no doubting about that," Ben told him. "But I come from a different world than you do. Now, that doesn't mean they're better than you, 'cause they're not. But you have to work harder for a chance that most of those kids will ever have to work in their lives. You can't afford accidents and mistakes, Peter. You have a bright, shining future ahead of you, kiddo. So bright, it's blinding to think about sometimes. But all that can go away if you give these people a reason to stop you." Peter had thought about what Ben said for a long time after that. Superpowers? What a joke. They were supposed to be something out of a comic book, reserved for people like Captain America. Great people. He needed to get them under control, locked away so he couldn't hurt anyone. Because Ben was right. Peter was living in a world of sharks. And having superpowers was like dumping blood into the water. Peter starts going to abandoned train stations and warehouses in the industrial district after school. They're pretty much empty, save a few security cameras, which Peter is careful to avoid, and some homeless people that don't pay him that much attention anyway. There are a couple of things Peter notices right away. To start, he's strong. Really, really strong. Run number 1 becomes even more cemented in his head after he's able to punch his hand through cleanly about 5 layers of cinder block. Peter almost makes himself sick with the thought of what he could do to a human chest. Peter's also fast and sticky. Peter spends about a week trying to master his apparent ability of latching onto things. He spends one afternoon trying to see if there was a time limit on his thickness. He ends up hanging from under an overpass for hours before he decides there isn't and heads home. He finds that his center of gravity moves with him easily. So even when he's upside down, he doesn't really feel like he is. It's weird. Peter knew prolonged absences are not missed by his aunt and uncle. May approaches him first, trying to broach the subject casually. She asks him if he's been hanging out with Harry and Ned more. She asks if he found a girl he likes and assures that if he had, he could tell them. They'd be totally cool about it, she promises. At his subsequent denials, she asks what it is he has been doing. Aggravation leaking into her tone. He tells her he's been working on some science stuff. She leaves it alone, but Peter knows she isn't happy about it. Peter doesn't know how to explain that he's doing it for them. He spends all this time away, so he's in control. Ben and May don't need his stupid superpowers wrecking their lives more than he already had. If Peter hurt someone, it would be the Melissa Vaux situation all over again, but 100 million times worse. And Peter wasn't an idiot. He knew that the superpowers he had were too similar to the powers Captain America had way back in World War II. And Peter also knew that there were people in the world that would do anything to get powers like his on their side and under their control. Power was an incredibly dangerous thing. And Peter was finding out every day that he had too much of it to let anyone know about it. He catches snippets of his aunt's worried comments to Ben. She's worried he's getting involved in dangerous things like gangs and drugs. Ben tells her that she's worried over nothing. Peter is a good kid. He wouldn't do anything like that. May asks him how would even he know? He's never home anymore. Peter covers his head with a pillow and tries to mask the rising voices. Peter learns his hearing is far, far too good to be stopped by something as weak as a pillow. Everything is Peter's fault again, and he remains helpless. Peter does nothing. His chest aches. It's Ben that talks Peter a week later. Corners him in his room after dinner. Peter thinks his tactic is pretty underhanded. May tells me you haven't been home as much. Ben starts easily, leaning against his doorframe. The lines around Ben's face are deeper now. His hair is lighter and his frame is thinner. Peter thinks his very existence had aged Ben 20 years. He wished he could stop hurting the people he loved. Anything Peter says is the wrong answer, so he just shrugs. Ben's eyes narrow. Any new friends at school? How's Harry and that other kid, Ned? Ben asked cordially. Peter sees it for the prying that it is and wishes he could just tell the truth. There is no cure for superpowers. Aunt May and Uncle Ben would be just as helpless as he is. No, Peter says bluntly. I just take the long way home. It's a shitty excuse, and he knows it. What's wrong with coming home on time? Ben asked accusingly, seeing through Peter's failing debate of an excuse. What's the point? You're never here. Peter bites back. Voice sharp, because he knows that it hurts, and maybe that will get Ben to back off. Peter hates himself for the words the moment they leave his mouth, because Ben's face falls, and he looks more devastated than Peter's seen him since his parents died. That good old-fashioned Parker fire, as May lovingly refers to it, enters Ben's eyes, and Peter knows this is going to be conversation that they both end up regretting. Don't you think I want to be here, Peter? Ben snaps at him. Peter rears back. Ben hasn't ever snapped at him before. Ben sees Peter aborted motion and lets out a long breath through his nose in an effort to calm himself. I'm gone so I can provide a better future for you. I'm gone working hard for you. So you can have everything you need to succeed in life. But all that means nothing if you threw it all away on something stupid. Your aunt tells me she thinks you're gonna mix up with the wrong things, Pete. And that breaks my heart. You have such a bright future ahead of you, but god damn it if you ain't trying to mess it all up. You have a gift, Peter. In your mind, a true, genuine power, and with great power comes great responsibility. You have a responsibility to use the power you have for good. Don't waste it on dumb teenage shit that will ruin your life. Peter knows there's truth in Ben's word. Peter knows he's right. But Peter's tired of having his efforts to keep them all safe undermined by the accusation that he isn't giving everything he has to his future. Peter spends hours in those warehouses. Hours alone working on fine-tuning his control so he never, ever hurts anybody ever again. So he can live the rest of his life as a perfectly average, boring Peter Parker. Peter Parker doesn't want any kind of great power and certainly doesn't want the responsibility that comes with it. Ben doesn't know this side of Peter's story, and Peter can never tell him. You just don't understand, Peter huffs, turning away from his uncle. No, I don't think you understand, Peter. You're coming home on time tomorrow, Ben tells him sternly. This isn't some free-for-all, whether you like it or not. May and R are in charge of you, and that means that what we say goes. That's not fair, Peter whimpers, knowing he sounds like a child and hating himself for it. Ben crosses arms. Too bad. Peter doesn't know a way past this situation. Peter doesn't know how to make Ben understand that Peter can bench press a train car. Peter can box jump a story of building, and he can hear the blood in Ben's veins right now as I speak. Peter doesn't know how to make Ben understand that Peter wishes he could come home after school too. Peter doesn't know how to tell Ben that he doesn't want superpowers or greatness or responsibility. Peter just wants to be home with his aunt and uncle and laugh at bad movies and eat Uncle May terrible pan lasagna and build Lego sets with Ned and talk about physics with Harry. Peter doesn't know how to tell Ben that he's 13 and scared and angry and helpless. Because Peter knows there's nothing Ben can do to fix it. And Peter refuses to make Ben helpless too. Peter doesn't do nothing. Peter leaves. He storms past Ben in the doorway and out of the apartment. He ignores May's concern and then frantic calls for him. He ignores Ben's stern call that he better not walk out that door. Peter leaves. It's the wrong choice. He goes down a couple blocks to a corner store. He thinks that maybe the walk will make him less angry, less upset. Maybe soda will wash down the lump in his throat from lying and hurting and yelling. Peter buys his soda, a Dr. Pepper, and is about to leave the bodega when the man behind him pulls a .22 and levels it at the young cashier. She has pink hair and a terrified look on her face as she puts her hands up. The apparent robber has a ski mask and fingerless gloves. There's a star tattoo on his wrist. "Scram, kid," the robber tells him. Peter takes a look at the cashier whose eyes beg Peter not to leave her, and Peter remembers what Harry says about good deeds and consequences. Peter could help, but not without jeopardizing everything he's worked so hard to keep a secret. Peter isn't some superhero. He's just a kid who pulled the short straw and ended up with powers he never in a million years wanted. Peter walks out the door. Peter makes it halfway down the block when a shot rings out. He whips around, dropping his soda. His ears ring with the sound, and he watches as two figures grapple outside the corner store. A second shot curts through the air. One of the figures runs and turns the corner, disappearing from the sight. The other falls, and in the neon lights of the open side of the store, Peter sees a look of anguish on the face of his Uncle Ben. The next thing Peter knows is he's at Ben's side, his hands covered in blood as Ben splutters under him. "Ben! Ben!" Peter screams, scrambling to press his hands harder into Ben's side to stop the flow of red pouring into the concrete. "Somebody call 911!" Peter yells, looking around frantically for any passerbys. In the corner of his eye, he catches a glimpse of the pink-haired cashier, a phone pressed to her face. "Please, Ben!" Peter begs. Ben looks at him. His glasses are broken and his lips are covered in blood. Peter washes as recognition filters into Ben's eyes. "Peter," he rasps, reaching up to grab Peter's shoulder. "I'm right here, Uncle, but please don't leave me now." Peter sobs. Ben gives him what looks like an attempt at a weak smile, but it comes out as a grimace as Ben coughs more blood. "Please, Uncle Ben, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Peter's choking his words, tears clouding his vision. "Remember what I said, Peter." Ben rasped under him, his voice garbled from the blood in his mouth. "It's going to be okay." "No, Ben," Peter whispers. No. Ben, please don't leave me here. I was doing it for you. It was for you and May. I'm sorry." Peter sobs. Peter holds his uncle and watches as the lights fade from Ben's brown eyes. They're staring up at him, unfocused and unseeing. Peter's heart breaks. It takes the ambulance another 7.5 minutes to get there. They're far too late. Peter seems numb as the police question him. He is in the back of the ambulance, wrapped in a shock blanket. The pink cashier is sitting next to him. "I'm sorry I didn't help you," Peter chokes out. The young woman turns to him, surprised he even spoke. "You're just a kid," he tells him, voice bitter and resigned. "What the hell you were supposed to do?" It's when he's back at home, in bed, trying to block out the sounds of May's sobs in the living room, that Peter realizes a third fundamental truth. Free. If you have the power to do something, and you don't, when bad things happen, they happen because of you. Peter wasn't helpless anymore. Peter could have stopped that robber, could have saved Uncle Ben. Peter's inaction is the reason for Ben's death. It's all Peter's fault. He just can't seem to stop hurting people he loves. Peter doesn't want to have superpowers. Peter doesn't want to be some kind of a superhero. Those belong in a comic book and history documentaries about people like Captain America. Great people. Not people like boring, average Peter Parker. But Peter doesn't have a choice, because now his uncle's dead, and this time it really is all his fault. Peter wasn't helpless anymore. He can no longer do nothing.